Hello, and welcome to the class for the Pfaff Quilt Ambition 630. This is one of my favorite machines in the Ambition lineup. Actually, this is my favorite Ambition out there in the lineup. This is a fantastic machine. Pfaff has really knocked it out of the park with this machine, both on features and function and price. I don't tell you what the price is, but I gotta tell you, this machine comes in at a really great price. So in this class, I'm going to take you completely through the machine. We're going to learn all about the screen, all of the buttons, the features, the functions of the machine, so that you have a good amount of knowledge on how to run this machine, or if you just want to know what this machine is about. I am going to show you threading in this video, but we're not going to spend a lot of time focusing on threading, but I will take you through it. So let's get started. I'm going to start by kind of telling you some of the basic features of the machine, kind of the things that I call the obvious features. So this machine has a nice bed on it. It is 8 inches from the arm to the needle. It has a 7mm stitch length. It has a large class 15 bobbins, so they hold a good amount of thread on them, and it is a drop and bobbin system in the machine. One of the biggest reasons people love Pfaff and buy Pfaff is that their walking foot is built into the machine. It's integrated into the feed. It is called Pfaff's IDT system, and that part is right in the back here. So this is with the walking foot off, and that is with it on. So the way that works, having it integrated into the machine, is sewing machines, this is the fabric, have feed dogs that feed from the bottom. And so when you put two pieces of fabric together and your sewing machine is only feeding from the bottom, you always have one piece of fabric move a little bit more than the other. So if you do your long seams, they don't stay perfectly together, they've shifted a little bit. And it doesn't really matter how much you pin. But Pfaff has an extra set of feed teeth that work on the top of the fabric, along with the ones that are on the bottom. So instead of just feeding like this, Pfaff kind of feeds like this. So from the top and the bottom at the exact same time, so that your seams stay perfectly lined up. Quilters absolutely love Pfaff for this reason, because it keeps their seams perfect. Also, if you're a garment construction person, keeps your seams really nice and tight and close. So that's kind of a really brief overview, so let's get into the nuts and bolts of this fantastic machine. Okay, so this is the top of the machine with the lid open. You can see all the stitches kind of laid out there. So this is the spool pin where the thread goes on. This spool pin will work both horizontally, and you can stand it up vertically like that, and then you have an auxiliary spool pin if you need to put it in for twin needle use. Now it's always best to use the thread horizontally and not vertically. The reason is when a spool is vertical, it has to rotate the spool when it's sewing. When it is horizontally, the thread falls off the spool without rotating it. That's why all machines in the industry now favor horizontal spool pins, because it keeps the tensions more consistent. Because if you have a big spool, it's going to turn with more drag than a skinny spool, and your tensions will always be in flux. So then we take our spool of thread, put it on our spool pin. We take our spool cap and put it on the front. There's different sizes to match the size spool that you're working with. So then you've just got this little threading path that you go in. It's pretty simple. You just follow the grooves of the machine and you pull it down. I will change the camera view to show you the rest, but the thread just went just like that. This is where the little tension is. So let me show you the front of the machine. Okay, so now we've threaded the thread here. So now you're going to come down the front. You're just going to swoop it around here. You're going to come up, and in this little slot is the take-up lever. It's a metal lever that moves up and down like this when the machine sews. The thread goes around that lever and it'll just slip into place. It is vitally important that you remember when you come down the front of the machine here that you loop around and go back up to the take-up lever. If you do not put the thread in the take-up lever on sewing machines, the sewing machine does not function. It tangles the thread up. So take-up lever, and then you're going to go down the front of the machine again, right to the little thread guide that's on top of the needle clamp, and I'll change the view. Okay, you have the little thread guide at the top of the needle clamp, so you just go behind that thread guide. And now we have our handy dandy needle threader. Needle threaders do take a little bit of practice, but they're pretty simple, and this machine actually has a really great, easy to use needle threader. So there's a little hook on the side of the needle threader that the thread goes into, and its job is to pull the thread horizontally. So then the thread gets pulled horizontally, you put it in the little slot of the needle threader. The needle threader is going to grab the thread and pull a loop through the needle, and then you just grab it and pull it through the rest of the way by hand, just like that. So now I'm going to show you how to load the bobbin. So you've got this little release that takes off the little clear window. It's a drop-in bobbin machine, so it's great to have these little clear windows because you can always see how much thread is on your bobbin. So then you take your full bobbin, the thread is going to come off from the left side of the bobbin. So if you hold the bobbin up, it's going to look like a P. So then you take your bobbin like this, you drop it into the machine, and then you've got this little groove with some arrows pointing you around to the proper direction. And you notice I'm keeping one finger on the bobbin so that I can pull the thread tightly into that groove. So you bring it all the way over until there's a razor blade that cuts off the tail of the bobbin. Now the bobbin is loaded in the machine. You put the cover on, and now you can start sewing. You do not have to rotate the hand wheel to pick up your bobbin thread. You just simply put your fabric in and you start sewing. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a little bit about the front buttons. I'm going to show you, I'm going to just tell you what they do, and then we will use the buttons and you'll see what they do. So very quickly, this is your needle up-down button. So the machine will stop always with the needle up. It'll finish the stitch and stop with the needle up so you can pull your fabric out. This button will set it to always stop with the needle in the down position. Quilters like this, garment construction people like this, so it'll stop with the needle in the fabric. This is automatic locks, so it's like a fixed stitch. So instead of having to reverse at the beginning and end of your seam, you can use that button and it will take care of it automatically. This is your scissor button, so it's going to cut the top and bottom thread for you, so you do not have to pull out the fabric and use scissors. It actually saves on a lot of thread when you have a machine with an automatic scissor button. Down here, we have the start-stop button. This is for sewing without the foot control, so you can hit this button and the machine will start to sew, and over on the side of the machine there is a speed regulator. So if you're using that start-stop button, you can dial the speed down a little bit. I love start-stop buttons, especially for free motion quilting, because you can set the speed exactly where you're comfortable doing your free motion quilting, and then use the start-stop button and it keeps the stitches very exacting. So you only have to focus on how you're moving the fabric at that point. Below that is your reverse button. So the reverse button is what you think. You hit the reverse button and it's going to sew in reverse. Now the reverse button works a couple ways. So if you are actively sewing where the needle is moving and you hit the reverse button, it is only going to reverse as you're holding the button down. If you're not sewing and you touch the reverse button, that light lights up on the front and now it stays in reverse until you hit the button a second time, and that takes it out of the reverse. So a couple little hidden things with the reverse button there. So then we're going to get into the touch screen. We're going to actually sew and show you using some of these features. I do want to show you this panel of stitches, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit so that you know what stitches the machine has, and then when we're using the touch panel, you'll see how to access those stitches. So as you can see, this top lid shows all the stitches, and the machine has a lot of stitches. The last stitch is numbered 201, and that is not counting the alphabet that is built into the machine. So Pfaff likes to kind of group their stitches together. At the first of the stitches, you'll have all of your utility stitches, you know, your straight stitch, zigzag, blind hem stitches, overcast stitches, and then it moves into the quilting stitches, the hand look stitches, and then you have your decorative stitches to follow after that. So a lot of stitches, but the reality is what most people sew within a few stitches. But that's fine, because the machine is going to give you the other stitches when you need them, and when you don't, they're just sitting there just waiting for you to get the inspiration to use them. But they're fantastic. So a lot of good stitches built into the machine. So I'm going to move back down to the screen, and then we're going to do some actual sewing after we navigate this screen. So what I decided I want to show you now is we're going to sew using some of these buttons, and then we'll talk about the touch screen. The thing with my videos is they're not scripted. I just am kind of just going with the flow because I love these machines and I know them really well, so I just talk it out. So let's play around with these buttons. So I'm going to put the fabric under the foot here so that you can see what happens. So when you turn on the machine, it's always going to be set for a straight stitch. I don't have to do anything else. It's just kind of ready to go. So when I stop sewing, it stops with the needle up every time. So when I hit this button here, so now when I stop sewing, it's going to stop with the needle down. each time, so that's great for pivoting. The lifter lever for the presser foot is on the inside of the arm, so then you can just pivot. Needle down is also great for quilters, because if you're doing, like, especially if you're doing chain piecing, you can sew off the fabric, stop needle down, put your next piece in, and keep going. So that's the needle up down button. Now, on Pfaff, their foot controls also have a feature where you can put the needle down automatically. And how you do this, so right now I have the needle turned off, the needle down feature turned off. And so if I want to quickly put the needle down once, I can just give my foot control a short tap with my foot, a harder tap, there we go. And then it puts the needle in the down position. So I actually use this more than I use the button, because most of the time I actually want the needle to stop up. But if I want to turn a corner, I just tap my foot, and then it puts the needle down, and I can turn the corner. Just like that. So that's a little hidden feature. Might be hard to even find that information in the book unless somebody tells you about it. But yeah, the foot tap. And I do appreciate having the button when I need to use the button. And you'll notice too, I like this, when I do use the button, it lights up, LED light next to it to let you know that you've activated that button. So I'm going to turn that back off. So now the next one here, locking stitch. So when I hit that button, you'll see another light come up on the screen, lets you know that it's going to do an automatic lock. Let me get this resituated here. And it does that. So when I activate the automatic lock here, when I need it to actually finish the stitch, I just touch the reverse button and then it's going to finish an automatic lock for me. So this activates it, but this is what sets it, the reverse button. So now one of my favorite features is the automatic scissors. Everybody loves automatic scissors. And it's to the point that once you get a machine that has automatic scissors, you don't go back. It's so great. So when you sew and you're ready to pull your fabric out, you just touch this button. And it cuts the top and the bottom. So then you pull it off. And you can see, you know, no tail there, a little tail on the back. So then you reposition your fabric and you just start sewing again. So you get to the end, cut, done. And the reason why I say this saves a lot of thread, because when you're sewing and you're going to pull your fabric out, you usually pull it out over here and you cut it and you've got a longer tail than you need, so you're wasting a lot of thread. Machines that have the automatic cutter, they don't waste as much thread. Okay, so let's do the start-stop button. So down here we have the start-stop button. The nice thing with Pfaff is you do not have to unplug the foot control to use the start-stop button like you do on almost every other machine in the industry. This machine lets you just use the start-stop button when you want to use it. So when I hit this, the machine starts sewing, and when I hit this again, it stops. Simple. You have the speed here, so if I need to dial the speed down when I'm using the button, now it's going to sew at whatever speed I had it set. Just like that. So easy. Start, stop button. Love it. So now below that, of course, we have the reverse button. And if I hit it when we're not sewing, the light turns on so that it's permanent reverse until I hit the button again and then it comes forward. If I'm actively sewing and I hit the reverse button, it only reverses as I'm holding the button down. Okay. So that's the front buttons on the machine. Let's switch over and we're going to play with the touchscreen. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this touchscreen. This is a great interactive machine. It's really easy to navigate this screen and it's intuitive. So it's really easy to figure out what the icons are and kind of how to get to where you want to be. So along this top section is the stitch. So right now we're on a zigzag stitch. Some of the information the screen tells us is it tells us the proper foot to use. So the presser foot we should be using is the 0A foot when we're doing a zigzag stitch. It shows us using the walking foot. So the walking foot is turned on, their IDT system. It shows me that the automatic tension settings, and this machine does have automatic tension, meaning that it sets the tension for the stitch that it's doing automatically. So when I do buttonholes, it turns the tensions down. When I do straight stitch, it puts the tensions to normal. When I do decorative stitches, it maybe turns into a certain setting, or for stretch fabric. So the machine is constantly adjusting. Of course, you have the ability to change those at any given time, but the machine will always go back to the defaults. So the tension right now for this stitch is set to 3.6, and the machine picked that for me. I did not pick that tension. We have the stitch menu is here, and I'll click that in a second and show you. Down here we have the stitch width here, and I love this that you get to see it change on the screen. So you know exactly what you're doing when you're hitting these buttons. So that's stitch width. This is stitch length, and again you're seeing the stitch change, so you know exactly what's happening when you adjust the stitch length and width. Over here we have mirror image, and I'll show you that with a different stitch because I can click it and it's not going to show you much because this stitch actually looks the same when it's flip-flopped. We have our heart menus, and I'll show you that more in a little bit. That is where you're customizing stitches and you're saving them into your own personal menu. Then we have different settings that the machine does, alphabets and programming settings, and then all of your tools, and I'll go through those tool settings in a minute. So the screen is set up very nice, and it's a good size screen for this machine. So first I'm going to show you how to navigate to the different stitches that the machine has. So you can just touch this little icon. So right now I put it on a zigzag stitch, which is stitch number 5. So we see the little 5 next to the stitch symbol. So we're going to touch this. It's going to pop up the menu. The menu is just like this little front panel I showed you. All the stitches are in there, and they have them broken into categories here. And then you can scroll through the menus using the up and down arrows. So then you can pick a stitch that you want to work with. I'm going to pick something that I can show you the mirror image features for just a second. So let's actually, maybe we'll pick this one. Little bells, so little satiny bells. So these are the mirror image buttons. So if I touch that one, you can see how it flip-flops. So this flip-flops at one direction, this flip-flops at the other direction. You see that? Yeah, so those are the mirror image buttons. And then let's go back here because I actually want to go to a straight stitch, which is stitch number 1, because I want to point something out when we're on the straight stitch. The buttons that were used to adjust the width of the zigzag or the width of any of the stitches that have width to them was here, but when we're on a straight stitch has no width. So then this changes into needle positions. And you can see the line moving on the screen. Right, so that's moving the stitch either to the left or to the right. And you can see it moves in very small increments so that you can get your stitch exactly where you want it to be. So if I wanted to use my standard foot as my 1/4 inch foot, I can move my needle over to my 1/4 inch position, and then I have a great 1/4 inch using my standard foot. And then the great thing is, if I did that and I set it to a perfect, say I set it to a perfect scant 1/4 inch using my regular foot, which I think works actually really well for 1/4 inch seams, then I can save it into my heart menu if I want to, and then I can go back and I can retrieve that stitch later on if I want to try to pull the stitch back up. So that's nice. That's nice to be able to have those menus to save your stitches into. Let's go back into our, and then here, these little up and down arrows, you probably already figured out what they're for. Let's go back to out of the menu stitch. So now I can scroll through my stitches here. If I just want to do that without bringing up my menu of stitches, I could do that. But otherwise, you just go to the menu, select the stitch you want, and there it is on the screen. Easy. And I want to show you how well the machine stitches out these stitches, because Pfaff does beautiful decorative stitches. I absolutely love the way that Pfaff sews. Their stitch quality is really high. Let me pull this up and show you some of the straight stitches that we've already done. So this, let me get into a good spot. It's kind of always awkward when you're working with the camera. This is the underside, and this is the top side. So very high stitch quality on this particular machine. And I also love this because this Ambition is very quiet. It's very smooth. It doesn't vibrate. It doesn't bounce around. It doesn't make a lot of noise when I'm sewing. This, I think, is one of the quietest Pfaffs that out there outside of They're really high-end models, the icons. The icons are fantastic. Those, I'll probably do a video on those down the road. But if you're looking to spend a lot of money on a sewing machine, they're the best in the industry. Just fantastic, but really quiet and great features. But anyway, so really high stitch quality on this machine and quiet running. So let's do a few decorative stitches, and I'm gonna probably pause the camera for a second, decide which stitches I wanna do. Okay, a few stitches that I like. I like stitch 179, maybe we'll do that, 182, I don't know, just ones I like. I fix sewing machines, if you don't know that about myself. Of course, I own the business, but I've spent the last 21 years fixing sewing machines, all different kinds. We sell almost everything in the industry, and I think I'm one of the best. So if you do, just a little plug for me, if you happen to own a machine, especially I would say my specialty. I am some of the best probably in the world on fixing Pfaffs and Viking machines. So Husqvarna and Pfaff, if you can't get yours fixed, you're working with a really bad dealer, maybe doesn't have a good service department, or they're trying really hard and they're just not experienced enough, give me a call. I'm pretty good over the phone. Or you're welcome to send the machine to me. Our prices are very reasonable. But anyway, that was a little tangent, little off there. But let's get back to doing these. So I like some of these stitches. Long story short, because I use these a lot when I'm doing my sewing samples in service. So let's start with 179. So again, I'm going to hit my little stitch menu, and then I'm going to use my little tabs here to get to stitch 179. And that is right there. So how about I change the camera view so you can see this actually. So usually when you do decorative stitches, the machine tells you to put on the 2A foot, which is proper. I'm not going to change the foot right now. But one thing that is good to do is turn off the walking foot. So the walking foot just pulls down and it just springs up. So now that's out of the way. A lot of the decorative stitches tell you to do that. You don't have to. You can leave it on if you're working on trickier fabric. But for the most part, you don't need an extra set of feed teeth pulling at the top of the fabric when you're trying to do some really ornate, pretty stitches. So let's put that down. I'm going to use my start-stop button right now instead of my foot control. So I'm going to hit that, and we'll watch this stitch out. You're noticing too, I'm not holding my fabric. Pfaffs feed very, very straight. Okay, so now let me hold this up so maybe you can see this. I'm gonna move into the right spot. So there we go. Cute little heart design. See if I can show you the back. Focus, camera, focus. There we go. So that's the back of it. So the back looks like the front. So no big pull away stitches on it. And that's kind of important to me. A lot of machines do not do very great decorative stitches on the back side. They pull away a lot. I think this is getting better in the industry. You go back 10 years and a lot of the machines did terrible decorative stitches. But so really good balance on the decorative stitches. I'm going to pick another stitch, which will be 182. So I'm not going to move my camera view. I'm just going to do this. Click on the stitch here and you can see the fabric down here. And I want to point out one other thing about the cutter here. So let me put this down. I'm going to hit start and we're going to do this particular stitch. So now the way that the cutter works also is that if I'm doing a stitch and I hit the cutter button while I'm doing a stitch or a pattern, it's going to wait until that pattern's completely finished. It'll lock the stitch and it'll cut. So what I did is when I'm sewing out this pattern, as the needle is still sewing, I hit the cutter button. So then again, it kept sewing until the pattern is finished, locked the stitch, and it cut. So now I have a completed pattern. If I had stopped sewing and hit the cutter button, it would have cut immediately. So again, I like to overemphasize this. Anytime you are sewing and the needle is actively moving and I hit my cutter button, it is going to finish the pattern. before it cuts, and it'll automatically lock for you. So anyway, so another great stitch. Show you the back side. There you go. So yeah. Okay, so let's play with something else. Let me hit pause for a second. Okay, so I want to show you programming. So programming is where you combine stitches together to make a border. So this next one down with the A, see, you'll notice there's two A's. There's A, and it has a funny little sewing stitch next to it, and then there's an A with a keyboard. If you were doing, if you're trying to write a name, you would go first to the A with the keyboard, because then you can write out your name. If you are combining stitches together, then you go to the regular A. And it might be a little bit confusing on why they both have A's, because actually when you are writing a name in this mode, it puts it into this mode to when you're sewing it out, if that makes sense. So it actually uses both. But right now what we're going to do is we're going to combine stitches together. So I'm going to go into this menu, and so now the screen has no stitches on it. It's a blank screen. So we're going to go to our stitch menu here, and we are going to pick a couple stitches to put together so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm going to go to where some of my more decorative stitches are. So let's find a couple stitches that might work well together. We're going to do the star stitch. So you can see the single little star on the screen. So I will go back here and go back to my decorative menu, and let's find something that I think might work well with the star. Maybe the little burst. Kind of looks like a sunrise almost. So now I have two stitches on the screen. So if I sew these out, it is going to sew them out in a pattern. Now I can put any combination of stitches together, and I can do as many combinations as I want. I wanted the heart, the star, and the sunburst, and a heart. You know, I can do that. I can put a bunch together. So I'll show you what this looks like. So you see that? Yep, so that's the pattern that I made there. So really easy. Again, you're back in this button, and if I didn't like it and I wanted to alter it, I can use my trash can here, and I can delete. Oh, sorry, that was bad. My phone is making noise. Let me silence that really quick. So we have those guys on the screen, and I can hit delete, and I can take them off the screen, and then I can go back and add stitches back to it. If I wanted to put, you know, any random combination of stitches, this isn't going to look like anything because these stitches look funny when they're single stitches. I still have mirror images here. I have the ability to adjust the length and the width, and of course I have my heart menu, so if I wanted to save that into the memory, I can hit save there. So that's the basics here, and then we have our trash can. You'll notice there's a little triangle in the corner. That means if you hold the button down, it will ask you if you want to delete everything on the screen all at once, and so I hit yes, and now it's all gone. If you touch the trash can once, it just deletes the last item. So now let's go down to the next one, and we'll do some alphabets. Alright, so let's write something, and you can write a whole sentence using the alphabet feature, so it comes up like a typewriter. If I'm making like a label, I can write made with love, and the neat thing with this machine is I can write that, made with love, and then I can save it into the memory of the machine, and I can recall it later on, so I don't have to necessarily make it every single time. And it's very easy to navigate this. It's pretty self-explanatory. So let's do made with love. So we have uppercase here, and then we can switch to lowercase. And then we have numbers and symbols over here, and then some characters from some other characters from other languages. So let's just do that, made, and then we're going to put a space. So that's our little space button, made. And if we could go back and capitalize the width if we want, let's do that. And back to lowercase. And then we're going to do another space there. I'll go back and capitalize again. So I hope you're getting a good sense on how easy all of these menus are. Nothing is complicated within this machine. It does a lot, but it's very, very user-friendly. It's kind of like using like an iPhone. You can pick it up and figure it out in a few seconds. So really, really easy, yeah, even easier than an iPhone. So then we have our trash can here if we made a mistake. Say we hit the wrong letter, so then we can just hit delete, which will delete one back. If I hold it down, of course, it's going to delete everything. So let's put that E back. And so then when we are ready to go, we can just simply start sewing. So years ago, to do a name, it was very complicated. And there was a lot of steps in sewing machines to do a name. You'd have to figure out the number of the stitch that corresponds with that letter. You'd have to be in program mode, and then you'd have to go like function, repeat. There was all these steps, and you'd have to arrow over for every character. They have really made this very, very easy and very simple to do lettering on the machines. Some machines in the industry today, believe it or not, still make it very complicated to do lettering, and I can't understand why, and still have multiple steps. But on this machine, it's very easy. You just go to your little alphabet button, and then let me hold that up so you can see made with love, right? So very simple to do that. So let's go into, so now if I go into my program screen, this is how I'm talking, why I was talking about how they're both related to each other. So when you are actually done making this in your alphabet screen, it ends up putting it into the program screen because you are actually programming these letters together or combining them together. So the neat thing here is that we have it back in our program screen, and I can kind of scroll through the letters here, and if I made a mistake, I can fix it there. So you can fix it after the fact, even after you've tried to sew it out. But the cool thing is, I can go now and pull a sewing machine stitch in here. So if I wrote made with love, and I go here, and I want to go find my little heart stitch, which is where, yeah, we'll do this 179. So then, now I just added a heart to the end. So let me hit start again. And we'll let this stitch out. So now also too, when you're writing a name, so if I wrote made with love, when I hit start to sew this out, I also hit my cutter button after so that it'll complete the whole pattern and it's gonna stop, tie off, and cut for me, right? So it doesn't just repeat it over and over and over again. Of course, I could have it repeat, but I didn't want to. Also, when I'm programming it out, if I would have hit the cutter button while I'm doing it in the program menus, it would have added the cut automatically so that I wouldn't have had to hit the scissor button. But so now it's finishing and it's cutting automatic. And now you can see there, it added the little heart at the end. And I could have added one at the beginning too, beginning and end, however you want to do it. So that's the program screen, and that is the alphabet screen on the machine. So now let's go back to the home button. Let's just go back to a regular straight stitch. So we're kind of back to normal. Let's go into the tools real quick because I want to go through these menus and show you what they are. First, when you go into it looks like a little geared wheel is what it is. I call it tools, but it's your settings within the machine. First, we have thread tension. So if you wanted to change the tension setting for the thread you're working with, you don't have to change your tensions really for fabric. You mostly change the tensions for unusual threads. So if you were doing, let's say you put a jean stitch thread in there, that's a really heavy thread. So it's possible you might have to increase the tensions a little bit to get it to sink in the way that you want it to. So you can override them, but generally the defaults work extremely well from the factory. So, and you'll know that when you change the setting because it turns green to let you know you've changed it. You don't really have to worry about playing with this because the machine goes back to normal. It doesn't stay at those settings, so you're not going to permanently change your machine. So even if I go and I pick a different stitch, and then I go back to that straight stitch, and I go back, my tensions are back to where they were before. So it only stays while you're on that particular stitch. Twin needle is a really good thing to activate for your machine if you put a twin needle in your machine. So here you can pick the size of the twin needle you're working with. So let's say you're working with a 3mm twin needle, and I've activated it. So now what the machine will do is, if I pick a straight stitch, of course it's going to be fine, but let's say you wanted to do some decorative stitches with a twin needle. So now it's going to make sure that you're not able to go beyond the width that that twin needle will work with. So see, stitch width limited for twin needle. So it won't go wider than a 4mm, so that you don't break that size twin needle when you're trying to zigzag the stitch out. So what this does is it gives you a lot of freedom. It gives you freedom to put a twin needle in, any size twin needle, and pick different stitches to get different looks and not have to worry about things not being set right. So the machine will take care of it for you automatically. So again, if you put a twin needle in, put the size of the twin needle that you're working with and activate it. Really, really great feature. Stitch with safety is also a very nice one. So if you were to put on a straight stitch only foot or plate, you can activate this. Now the machine will not let you zigzag. It won't let you move your needle. It won't let you zigzag. It won't let you do anything but a regular straight stitch, right? It won't even let you move that straight stitch around because it does not want you to break that needle. So that is stitch with safety. So if it was me and I put on a 1/4 inch piecing foot, I would turn that on because it's safe and it's easy enough to turn back off. So then we got languages. So if you speak a different language, in our area there's a lot of Spanish speakers, you can switch the language of the machine. You've got the alarms are the default is for them to be on. That is, every time I do something wrong, the machine beeps at me. That's all. So if that annoys you, you can turn it off. Calibrate the touchscreen is if you are touching an icon and maybe you're getting the icon next to it, you can recenter the screen. And then the sewing machine version that's the version. You don't have to worry about that, but the factory sometimes likes to know those kind of information. So, so that is your settings menu. So really easy to navigate in there. And again, I love how easy it is to understand. I love the fact that these machines show you words. They don't try to explain everything with symbols. Like, you notice that in the world, especially you go back 10 years ago, they tried to use symbols for everything, and it just was confusing. And I think we're getting back to being able to use words and have more language settings for people. So, so it's really easy then to understand the machine settings when you can read what each setting does. And then to exit, you just hit the setting buttons again, or you hit the home button, which would be the sewing foot at the top. So I just want to talk just a second more about saving into the machine's memory. So if you remember earlier, we moved our needle over to a 1/4 inch, and then I hit the little arrow to the heart. Well, that put it into the machine's memory for recall later on. So if I come back, so let's say I'm going to go to bed, and and I'm sewing on a certain stitch that I have set. I've changed the length and the needle positions and all that. So right before I go to bed, I will hit that button. Ba-dink. And then it's going to save it into the machine's memory. So now I turn the machine off, and the next day I turn the machine on and I'm ready to sew again. We're going to let the machine kind of boot up here for a second. All of its little calibration noises. So now I want to sew again. So I'm going to hit the little heart button, and voila, see the stitch moved? It went back to where I was last night. So anytime you are going to stop and you want it to remember, just hit that and the little arrow to the heart, and it's going to remember. And to get to it, you just hit the heart next to it, and it brings you right there. So really, really easy. Again, everything on this machine, I can't emphasize that enough. It's very, very easy to work with. So now let's do a little bit of sewing on the machine. We've talked a lot about the screen. I think you guys probably have a pretty good understanding on the screen at this point. I want to show you free motion quilting and buttonholes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the camera view, and we're going to put on the free motion foot that comes with the machine. Okay, so we have our little free motion quilting foot that comes with the machine. So to put on a free motion foot, I actually have to unscrew the ankle on the machine. When you're changing the normal feet that the Pfaff has, so let me pull the 1/4 inch foot out of the bag here. This is your accessory tray, by the way, in the front of the machine. It holds all of the feet and accessories. This is a new machine, so I still have them in a little bag. So to take off our feet normally, you push down just on the very front of the foot, and the foot pops off. And then when you're going to put a foot on, you just line it up, and you pull it up, and it snaps back on. Or some people will bring the lever down and line the foot up and have it grab the foot, right? Just like that. But we are going to not change the normal foot. We are going to do our free motion quilting foot. So to do that, we're going to take out the little screwdriver that comes with the machine. We are going to loosen the screw here. Ooh, try to keep it. I'm going to try to do this where my hands aren't necessarily in the way of the camera, which is an awkward position, but I'm going to unscrew that screw there. I'm going to take my foot off completely. Then I'm going to take my free motion foot, and I'm going to, my hand may block the camera, possibly. Let's see if I can do this where I don't block it. Where I'm going to maneuver it into position here. And then what I like to do, I think it always makes it easier, is once you get the foot started, to put the needle down a little bit. I always do that because free motion feet have spring-loaded arms that need to be above the needle clamp screw. And so when you're trying to put it on, the needle clamp screw is trying to push on that spring-loaded arm. So if you bring the needle down when you get the foot in its relative position, bring the needle down into the foot, it takes the pressure off. And of course I just dropped my screw on the ground. There it is. Oop, hope I didn't put my head in the camera too much. Okay, bad editing, but that's okay. So we got our foot in. We're going to put our screw in right here. And of course everything always takes a little bit longer when you're trying to do it at awkward positions on film, but that's okay. So tighten that up. Just like that. So now I have my free motion foot on. What I should also show you is, let me see if I can back the camera up a little bit. And I'm going to show you lowering your feed dogs. So we have our accessory tray. So we're going to slide the accessory tray off for a second. And in the back here, the back of the machine, underneath the stitch plate area, you'll find a little lever. And you'll flip the little lever to the side, and it's going to turn off our feed dogs. So then we can put our tray back on. And then let me change my camera angle. Now we can do some free motion quilting. So when I do free motion quilting, if I'm doing it on a machine that has a start-stop button, I like to use a start-stop button. So I like to do it kind of fast. I think free motion quilting fast is a little bit better. Especially, this is my advice for free motion quilting. If you are new to free motion quilting, use a size 90 needle. I can't emphasize that enough. And run the machine fast, a little faster than you're comfortable with. A big mistake people make when they're new at free motion quilting is they run the machine too slow and they don't use the right size needle. Nothing works. Free motion quilting takes many hours of practice before you're good, but run the machine faster than you're comfortable. Don't be scared. Everything's going to be fine, but you'll have less problems that way. So I had the machine set fast for me, and then I'm going to hit the start button. I'm not the best free motion quilter in the world. I don't do any little flower patterns. I just kind of meander around a little bit. That's about all that's in my wheelhouse. that is my little free motion quilting. Let's look at it from the back side here for a second. I got little fuzzies on there, but that is it from the back side and front side. So free motion quilting on the machine is very easy. Does a great job with its quilting, but of course that's what Pfaff is really known for. They're very strong in the quilting community. So I'm going to put this, I'm going to pause the camera for a second, and we're going to do buttonholes, because the buttonholes are great on this machine. You may never do buttonholes, but the machine has the ability to do some wonderful buttonholes. Okay, so I've reattached my ankle, took off the free motion foot. So now we are going to put on our buttonhole foot. And the way that this buttonhole foot works is it measures the buttonhole based on the button that you attach to the back of the foot. So this foot has a little ratchet area. So you take the button, so pretend my finger is a button, and you put it in the back, and you ratchet it in until it locks into the foot. So now it's going to do a buttonhole to match that size button. So to attach the foot, I'm going to make the buttonhole a little bit longer so that everybody can see how great it looks. So just line the foot up, lower the bar, and it's going to grab on. Anytime you're doing buttonholes, just like when you're doing free motion, you need to have the upper feed system turned off. So the walking foot is off. And then the other step, a little hidden step, is there's a buttonhole lever right here. You have to pull it down. And this is a smart machine, so it's going to tell you if you're doing things wrong. If you don't pull the lever down, it'll say, hey, pull the lever down. So, so then we line up our fabric. We select the buttonhole stitch on the screen. So I've selected a buttonhole stitch, and now I'm just going to hit start. Oh, that's a little bit of a boo-boo. I did not raise my feed dogs back up from after free motion quilting. So let's raise the feed dogs back up. So I just flip the little lever like that. So I'm going to hit start again. So now, a lot of machines in the industry do this now, and it's really what you want with a buttonhole is you want both columns of your buttonhole fed in the same direction. The way the machine does this is it does it by using a little running stitch, and then it satin stitches back down over the running stitch. It gives you, that's the way professional buttonholes are made, and you'll notice it cut automatically when the buttonhole is done. I did not have to tell the machine to do that. So you can see just how beautiful that buttonhole looks, like that. And you'll see that both sides are perfectly matched, and that is because it is feeding both sides in the same direction. So both sides fed this way when it was doing the satin stitch. So and again, it does it with the running stitch. What it doesn't do, and this is what you kind of want to shy away from with machines nowadays, is if you have a machine that wants to feed the columns in two different directions, because it just doesn't do as nice of a job. So if this one did a satin stitch down this way and then a bar tacked and then it did the satin stitch up the other direction, that doesn't give you as nice or professional of a look as you could have with a machine that does them both in the same direction. So that's why I kind of emphasize that a little bit. So beautiful buttonholes. You have buttonhole options too. So that is a real standard buttonhole that I did there. You have a few different choices. I'll show you a few. So let me go pick this one. This one I think you would see on I've seen this on men's dress coats. I think it's used for some different fabric types, but it is a very different buttonhole. You'll notice this one does not use the running stitch, by the way, but it's a totally different feeding of the buttonhole. It actually goes back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Oh, I take it back. This one actually does do a little running stitch. But it does it down the middle where you're going to cut the buttonhole open. So it's a really, I like this. I like the way this buttonhole looks, but it's not the one that you would typically use. Oh, well, let me see if I can get it into a position where you can actually see it. There you go. Can you see that? Yep, different buttonhole. And then you have keyhole buttonholes. This machine has a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 buttonhole stitches, and then 1 eyelet stitch. So that is doing the buttonholes. So when you're done doing the buttonholes, you're just going to push down on the front of your buttonhole foot, and it's going to pop off like that. Then you're going to take your lever and you're going to push the lever back up. Take your foot that you're wanting to sew with, line it back up, snap it on, and now you are back to regular sewing. I just want to show you one add-on that I think for owners of this machine, for me it would be a must-have. So if you own this machine and you haven't gotten a quilting table yet, I would recommend it. This is Pfaff's quilting table. It's got little feet that fold up when you're storing it, and then you fold them down when you're going to attach it to the machine. You slide off your accessory tray like that, and then you take the table, and then the table just slides right on and snaps onto the machine like that. So it gives you a much bigger working surface. So if you work with larger pieces of fabric, or if you're a quilter, I would highly recommend getting Pfaff's quilting table. I like the manufacturer's tables best. I always prefer that because they have a cleaner look on the machine. They're meant to attach to the machine. I don't care as much for the plexiglass ones with the legs that always break off or fall off or get lost. So yeah, really nice clean look with this machine. So that's the add-on. If it was me, that's what I would add on. So I think that we are about at the end of our video. I hope you have learned a bit about this machine. If you have any questions about it, of course you can follow up with us at Village Sewing. If you bought the machine from us, hopefully this is a good instructional video to help you get started with your new machine. But I, again, absolutely love this Ambition. I think they did a fantastic job when they made this particular model.